Maybe we should just start messaging Nike, Instagram, and putting some pressure on.
Aryna Sabalenka stood at a WTA Finals podium in Riyadh last November and told her own fans on camera to start messaging Nike on Instagram until the company gave her a better dress.
Nike. Happy to be part of the Nike, but so many things
The world #1, publicly outsourcing her wardrobe war to strangers. And while she was doing that, Nike's marketing team was quietly hand-stitching Tagalog poetry into a hair tie for a 21-year-old from Manila, ranked 28th in the world. Her name is Alex Eala, and what Nike put in the note attached to that hair tie is the reason the biggest sportswear company on earth is now openly picking sides in a war the world #1 did not realize she was losing. If Sabalenka's Nike deal really does expire at the end of this year, does she stick around and wait for the sick 2027 kits she was promised on camera in Riyadh, or does she follow Raducanu straight out the door? 9 days ago, Eala walked off center court after a fourth-round Wimbledon loss to Jasmine Paolini, 4-6, 6-4, 3-6. 3 days after that, she flew home to Manila, and on July 13th, she was received at Malacañang Palace by the President of the Philippines, not as a tennis player, but as a national figure. That is the backdrop for what Nike did next. Rewind to November 8th, 2025. Post-final press conference in Riyadh. A reporter asks Sabalenka about her cutout dress, the same silhouette fans had already documented across the U.S. Open, Cincinnati, and Roland Garros. Her answer in her own words.
Maybe we should just start messaging Nike, Instagram, and putting some pressure on.
Maybe we should just start messaging Nike on Instagram and putting some pressure on, but let's wait for 2027, because that year is going to be sick. Read that again. The #1 ranked woman in tennis, a 3-time Grand Slam champion, telling her audience that her 2026 kits are not special and that she needs them to pressure her own sponsor. That is not a superstar with leverage. That is someone crowdsourcing a fight she cannot win in a boardroom. 6 months later, at Roland Garros, the humiliation deepened. Sabalenka's custom black and red mesh dress showed up on court on the body of an unranked Russian player named Oksana Selekhmetova. Same tournament grounds, same dress, no exclusivity. Sabalenka thought she had a signature. She had a rental, now crossed the ocean to Beaverton, Oregon. February 26th and 27th, 2026. Nike flies Alex Eala, then ranked outside the top 40, to world headquarters, full campus tour, VIP treatment, and then Nike's global account posts a photograph of Eala inside the campus with a caption in Tagalog, "Salamat sa pagbisita." Thank you for visiting. Nike's global marketing arm, the same arm that has not used non-English signage for a tennis player since Naomi Osaka chose to speak Filipino for a 21-year-old. That was February. Rewind to the previous summer, and the pattern gets sharper. July 1st, 2025. Wimbledon Day 2. Eala walks onto center court for her main draw debut against Barbara Krejcikova. In her hair, a custom white Sampaguita, the national flower of the Philippines, engineered to Wimbledon's all-white dress code. Attached to it, a handwritten Nike note. Part of that note reads, "Kung may tinanim, may aanihin," and what you plant, you'll one day reap. A Filipina on the grass courts of history, not just playing for herself, but carrying a nation in full bloom. Read that sentence slowly. That is not a marketing slogan. That is a corporation learning a Filipino proverb in a Filipino language for a Filipino player on the most English lawn in world sport. Every Filipino watching this understood what that note meant before Nike's non-Filipino executives ever did. The world's biggest sportswear brand did not just sign Eala, it studied her country. Compare that to what leaked out of Yahoo Sports in May of this year. An insider report on Nike's tennis roster quoted directly, "Only Naomi Osaka is contractually guaranteed full fashion exclusivity. Everyone else, including Sabalenka, is in a lower tier." Nike, according to the report, plans to extend that top tier by 2027, the same year Sabalenka herself said her kits would finally be sick. She was not complaining without cause. She was telling the truth about her own contract on camera and hoping nobody translated it. Now compress the timeline. November 2025. Sabalenka begs fans to message Nike. February 2026, Nike flies Eala to Oregon and thanks her in Tagalog. May 2026, Sabalenka's dress ends up on another player. July 2026, Nike hands Eala a second custom piece at Wimbledon, a visor with Tagalog embroidery, and the pink kit associated with her run reportedly sells out on Nike Philippines within hours. 8 months, 2 players, 2 entirely different conversations, and this is the part the Filipino audience already knew in their bones before any Western outlet caught up. You watched the Sampaguita walk onto center court last year. You saw the Tagalog caption from Beaverton in February. You have been telling your friends for months that something rare was happening, that Nike was not just sponsoring Eala. Nike was studying her. The May Insider Report and the July Visor are not the beginning of that story. They are the moment the rest of the world finally read the note you already had memorized. The outlet that broke Sabalenka's 2027 is going to be sick quote, Sports Illustrated's Serve Desk, the same publication whose tennis-style coverage Nike executives read and whose reporting Sabalenka's own management circle monitors, put the situation in one sentence in November of 2025. Their tennis-style desk wrote, quote, Nike tennis is extremely uninspired beyond Osaka. It is a far cry from the effort put in for Rafael Nadal and Serena Williams. Sit with that. The most authoritative American tennis media voice in print declared on the record that Nike had one player worth designing for. That was 8 months ago. Between then and now, Nike did not add a second player by ranking. Nike did not add a second player by Grand Slam count. Nike added a second player by nation, by language, by cultural gateway, and that player is Alex Eala. The Sports Illustrated verdict was not wrong. It was early. Here is what Nike's spreadsheet actually shows. Sabalenka competes under a neutral flag because of ongoing sanctions. She cannot deliver a national market to a global sponsor. Osaka opened Japan for Nike. Eala opens the Philippines, a 100+ million person nation with one of the largest overseas diasporas on the planet. And an untapped Southeast Asian tennis economy Nike has been trying to crack for a decade. That is not a ranking calculation. That is a geopolitics calculation. Watch the next 10 days. The Mubadala DC Open starts July 25th, and Eala's next Nike look will be dissected frame by frame the moment she steps on court. Then Canadian Open, then Cincinnati, where Sabalenka is defending, then the U.S. Open, where both women will play under the same sun in kits designed by the same company, telling 2 completely different stories. And by the end of 2026, Sabalenka's Nike contract is rumored, according to fan readings of her own 2027 phrasing, to be up for renegotiation. Emma Raducanu already walked from Nike to Uniqlo in February for a reported $3.5 million a year. The exit door is not theoretical anymore. Eala did not win Wimbledon. She lost in the round of 16 to Paolini, and it was not close in the third set. Contrast that with what she wrote after her Eastbourne final loss to Maya Joint last June, after squandering 4 championship points on her own Instagram. This has to be one of the toughest losses of my early career, but I firmly believe that it's these moments that make you stronger and shape your character. She wrote that. Then she went to Wimbledon and beat Iga Swiatek in the 3rd round. That is the pattern. Lose, fly home, show up. On July 13th, 6 days after Paolini beat her, she walked into Malacanang Palace as a guest of the president. Draw your own conclusion about what kind of 21-year-old does that. Circle back through the receipts. Riyadh, November. The world #1 asking strangers to fight Nike for her. Roland Garros, May. Her dress on another player's body. Beaverton, February. Nike, thanking Eala in Tagalog. Wimbledon, July of last year. A Sampaguita, a proverb, a nation in full bloom. Wimbledon this month. A visor stitched in her language and a pink kit selling out in the country she represents. Malacanang, July 13th. A president welcoming home the player Nike bet on before the rankings caught up. Nike is not snubbing Aryna Sabalenka. Nike is telling every player on its roster that being the best in the world is no longer the currency. The currency is a story, a language, and a nation. And right now, one 21-year-old from Manila is holding all three while the number one is drafting Instagram complaints. So here is the question, and answer it honestly in the comments. If Sabalenka's Nike deal really does expire at the end of this year, does she stick around and wait for the sick 2027 kits she was promised on camera in Riyadh? Or does she follow Raducanu straight out the door? And be honest with yourself on the second one. If both dresses were hanging in a store tomorrow, are you buying Sabalenka's recycled cutout, or are you buying Eala's Sampaguita pink? Stake your prediction below before DC Open first serve on July 25th. Screenshot it. Come back at the US Open and tell us you called it. Subscribe. So the next chapter, Eala's next Nike look, Sabalenka's next press conference, and whichever contract breaks first, lands in your feed the hour it happens. This is the branding war of the season, and the receipts are only going to get louder.